Happy day 2. Good to see you all. I hope you enjoyed yesterday's session. What's up? All right, cool. So let's just get right into it. So we're starting slow and taking the time to inform those that maybe haven't meditated that much. Some key points that I think are critical. Probably the most critical sort of details outside of the Om itself. And so I think today is a very, very important day. And the techniques we go over, you should certainly take to heart and again elevate them alongside the Om, the entire point of this challenge. And so those key points are what I like to call the 4 fundamentals of a practice. And if you adhere to them, these qualities, these instructions will take you as far as you ever need to go. And so right off the bat, they are posture. You need to hold your body in a specific way to both induce the peace and the presence, more specifically, that is necessary to touch the meditative experience. But that posture also provokes a little bit of stress, which is by design, so posture. And then once you assume that posture, you have to be still. And so your stillness is paramount. Attempt to restrain the fidgeting in your hips and torso. Attempt to restrain the smacking of the lips. Attempt to restrain the movement of your fingers. All of these tiny details, your willingness to restrain them is going to provoke a deep sense of presence and wakefulness, which is necessary, but also a sense of control and agency over yourself, which is also paramount to the process. So posture, once you have your posture, be still. But because these first 2 steps really create a little bit of stress and anxiety in the body, we need to counterbalance that effect by breathing deeply. So the 3rd step is breath control. Essentially, you just want to breathe into the stomach and into the chest. Maybe avoid breathing into the upper collarbone area, like these hyper full, exaggerated inhales. That also creates a little bit of stress. So breathing down into the lower lobes of the lung is really going to sort of perpetuate this tranquility, which is what we're going for. And then the final step, the 4th step, is you want to replace the thought process with feeling, with physically feeling the body. The great definition of yoga and meditation is chitta narod. You want to restrain the thought process itself. You want to obliterate thinking, which runs counterbalance to the way we often hear about mindfulness, which is very relaxed and sort of open to focus or distraction, and in that it relieves the student of any pressure, which is awesome. We don't want to feel pressure in our practice, but the yogis were a bit more stern and a bit more committed to the purity or the essence of the work. So yoga chitta vritti narod. Chitta vritti narod. Restrain the thought waves is the great instruction. And what you'll find is that's extraordinarily difficult, borderline impossible to do. And the best way I found is, instead of thinking, just feel the glory and the details and the mystery of your own body. It tends to be fairly pleasurable once you get a taste for it, and that sensation really helps us stop thinking, at least for a short while, for 30 seconds, a minute, which is all we really need to do. And so we'll get into that today while we chant the Om, but before that, let's talk about yesterday and highlight any obstacles that may have arisen. The obstacles are fairly uniform throughout. It's maybe like a little boredom, a little bit of impatience, again, the insecurity with how you think you sound when you're chanting. It might have sort of built up into anger or frustration or confusion. And so if these emotions arose, or when they arise within your practice, and they'll come in cycles, you'll have doubt and then it'll disappear, you'll talk yourself out of it, you'll use your rationality, you'll remember your desire to meditate, and then you'll get back into chanting the Om and it'll be nice. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the rain clouds of impatience will come, and you'll feel impatient, but then you'll remember. Remembering is such an empowering part of this practice. The Buddha coined the phrase samasati. Just remember what you're doing. Remember that you want to be on this journey. You want to be meditating. And so you'll remember that you want to be meditating. You'll push the impatience aside. You'll enjoy that Om, and then insecurity will come. You'll hear a little rumble in your voice or a little squeakiness in your voice. And so you just go through these cycles. And so a nice metaphor to help us sort of tolerate the cyclical nature of our minds as they shift from positivity to negativity is that, The yogis believe our minds are the obstacle and the key to this greater degree of well-being, or this heightened sense of self, or most romantically, a real living relationship with the divine, or with the miraculous nature of existence. The mind is the key and the obstacle. And when we use these techniques, the Om is one technique, pure meditation, just stillness is a technique, just patient, tranquilized breathing is a technique. As these negative thoughts become more obvious to us, because they're sort of shielded or remain elusive when we're out in our day-to-day, because we don't label them as anything to observe. We tolerate them, but they're just part of life. We have other things to worry about. But when we're in meditation, because meditation puts these negative thoughts in a specific context, they are something to purge from our being, they're a little bit more obvious to us. And so your techniques are like a scalpel lancing the boil of the mind, lancing the wound of the mind. And in that, as these negative thoughts arise, boredom, impatience, insecurity, doubt, frustration, just consider that it's like the pus oozing out of an infection, and that the more you experience these thoughts without reacting to them or sort of being consumed by them, the more they are the less likely they will arise in the future, right? And so again, it's like this visual metaphor. Your mind is a boil, it's an infection. The mantra itself, the chanting itself, cuts the infection open, and out comes the toxicity of impatience, doubt, frustration, and all of this. And so you're sitting there, and as you chant and as you experience these emotions or these ideas, it's a good thing. They're sort of being purged from the system. So an interesting reframing of the experience. So I just wanted to share that with you. Take that metaphor to heart, so if it arises in your practice, you can smile as you experience your impatience, because now you're like, oh, it's being purged from my mind. Beautiful. And so we discussed the fundamentals: be still, hold a strong posture, breathe slowly, and then work to feel your body instead of thinking about your experience. The Om is a physical experience, and in that it really helps us feel instead of think. And the last little bit is sort of the ideology of today's session. I want you to consider that all of this is art, right? Human beings are unique compared to other animals because we really sort of expanded upon the ability to create art, from pottery to tattoos to jewelry to clothing to buildings and to music. We really took this creative expression to the limit. And so art by its nature is a way to express the unexpressible, to somehow put form to the unknowable and to the deeper mysteries of the human soul and life itself. And by its nature, art is transcendental. We all have danced or felt extraordinary emotion when we've seen a movie or heard a song or sort of witnessed a beautiful painting. That emotion, that sort of elevated state, is because, philosophically, we are encountering the transcendent nature of existence, something that is actually beyond the senses. Music communicates something beyond sound. Paintings communicate something beyond light. And movies communicate something beyond their scripts and their scenes and their cinematography. They spark the human soul. And if we associate our practice, our posture, and our chanting with art versus with exercise or with just, our idea of meditation, it will inspire us to experience our own process as transcendental itself, that we are attempting to erect or extract the mystery nature of ourselves. And so art is a key point to pivot our practice into more meaningful space. And so there are a couple Sanskrit terms that I think, if you commit to memory, will help you appreciate that, yes, in fact, it's art. The yogis perceived it as art, and in that, the whole process is enriched. And so the first term is Antahkarana. Antahkarana, which means the divine instrument. That as I hold my body and really lengthen my spine, which is the key instruction in terms of the posture, you're something like a piano with all of those strings being pulled, taut, and tuned. You're something like a violin, again, strings being pulled, taut, and in that, their tension allows them to hold a resonance. And so when we hold our bodies and erect our spine and straighten our arms and our postures, we are more likely to hold the vibration or the resonance or the experience of the meditative epiphany, which is self, which is God, which is peace, which is bliss. And there's, a physiological, there are physiological theories that back that up, but we don't really have to concern ourselves with that right now. Again, it's just art. To hold yourself in a beautiful way provokes that sense of power, provokes that sense of depth. And so Antahkarana. And so the final term is Hiranyagarbha. And so when you see art, you see beautiful art, something like the Taj Mahal or the thousands of temples in Myanmar or Burma, you are provoked by it. And these sites across the world pull thousands and thousands and thousands of people to them because, again, we are attracted by the vision of the transcendent. And so when you hold yourself in a beautiful way, you really concern yourself with how you're organizing your body, how you're organizing your breath, how you're chanting the Om. The divine is attracted to the artistry of your experience, let alone other people being attracted. But the goal is the divine comes to you, the epiphany comes to you when you hold yourself in this unique manner. And so Hiranyagarbha is a creation myth that comes out of the Vedas, out of ancient India. Hiranyagarbha means the golden embryo, the embryo from which Brahma or life itself manifested. Garbha also means descent. And so in that, when we hold ourselves in this way as Antahkarana, as this divine instrument, all the strings of our nervous system and all the strings of our muscle fibers are tuned and taut, and we're chanting this Om and creating this sort of pleasurable resonance in our body and feeling that instead of thinking about our lives, the epiphany is more likely to occur. It's like light attracting a moth. And from there, this is Hiranyagarbha, the golden embryo of creation, right? Super metaphorical, super artistic, comes to us. And for a moment, our minds are purged completely of all of its infection, its doubt, its impatience, its boredom, its insecurity. And as we sit there having this little moment of peace, which might last 3 seconds, it might last 30 seconds, we are struck. And in that, we become the creative process. We become that transcendent expression of something beyond our logic, something beyond our rationality, and something certainly beyond our day-to-day experience of self. So I hope that all makes sense in some interesting chain of ideas. More than anything, the experience speaks for itself. And just because these glorified ideas, they're glorious and they do come, they are real, but if they don't, just consider that it's also a practice. You have to get a sense of what you're doing, and eventually it will arise. Cool. So I hope you enjoyed that. Again, the Sanskrit terms for those that love Sanskrit or, language, Antahkarana. You are Antahkarana. You are a divine instrument that is capable of expressing the transcendence. And then Hiranyagarbha, right? Hiranya is golden, and then Garbha is egg or embryo that descends into the practitioner. And this egg, the myth of this egg is that this is what generated the universe itself. This is what generated the singular God or the manifest reality. Beautiful. Okay, let's get into this. Happy day 2, well on our way. Tall seated position. Wrist rests on knees, nice straight arms. And so the ideas will stick and they won't stick. What resonates, you'll remember. What doesn't, you've already forgotten. And that's how it is. But what you should apply to your memory are the techniques and the ritual of your practice, how we build it every single day. And so the first thing we do is we get into our posture. And so tilt your hips forward, actively lengthen your spine, and think about your spinal cord and all the nerves extending into your tissues and limbs. And as you straighten your arms and lengthen your spine, think about a stringed instrument being tuned. Tilt your hips a little further forward, engage your core to lift your ribs away from your pelvis. And if there's any bend in your elbows, straighten the arms, no bend in the elbow. It's a little stressful. Immediately the pus of the mind might ooze out. I don't want to straighten my arms. I like a little bend in my elbows. It's more relaxing. But the more resistance you're willing to tolerate, again, the more purified, in quotations, purified the mind becomes. Palms rotate up to the sky, hands are open, and just feel, this is step one, posture. Notice that it wakes you up, creates a little stress, a little anxiety, maybe a sense of quickening in your body or your mind, but it also comes with confidence and alertness. Now bring a random finger to each thumb. And the second you set your mudras, your posture is finished. The temple door is closed. And we can proceed to the next fundamental, which is stillness. Once your fingers touch your thumbs, once the mudras click into place, nothing moves, nothing adjusts. So much of meditation and success within meditation is about openly and honestly observing the condition of your mind. And so more than likely, this generates a little bit of stress. So breathe into your stomach, slow down your breath. Try to avoid the upper chest, the collarbone region. And notice a sense of tranquility, a sense of calm wash over the body. And so now you are the masterpiece, you are the Taj Mahal, you are the one of 10,000 temples of Burma. Your symmetry, your constitution, your patience, your openness, your presence, like light, will attract the divine, will attract the epiphany, will attract blissfulness. And so I'll chant the Om 3 times to set the vibe. And then on your own, start to chant your mantra, feeling instead of thinking, experiencing that fourth fundamental. Good work. Happy to see you all. Day 2. Here it is. Patient inhale. I'll chant 3 times. Feeling instead of thinking last time. Take a deep inhale, breathe into the belly. Notice the peace that comes from breathing into the diaphragm. Chant your mantra. So now everyone, lengthen your spine, straighten your arms. Again, think about stringed instruments, and as you chant the Om, observe the consequence of refining your posture. The consequence to appreciate is wakefulness. That by lengthening the spine, you forced your mind into deeper presence. And now it doesn't create stress, even though biologically it does. To the yogis, it extracts stress. And in that purifies awareness of its toxicity. If you have moved, adjusted your neck, wiggled your fingers, wobbled through the torso, from this point on, commit to stillness. And again, the stillness does not generate stress, even though it does physiologically. To the yogic mind, it extracts it. In that the more you feel at first, the better, the cleaner the mind is becoming. Now your practice is art, like the Taj Mahal, like the temples of Burma, like the Mona Lisa, like David, like your favorite song. And in the same way that masterful works of art attract the masses, when we practice masterfully and beautifully, it philosophically attracts the divine. So one more Om. Decrease the volume, but extend its length. Feel the body vibrating. Replace thinking for a flash, and then rest in silence. Now in your silence, posture, stillness, belly breathing, and feeling. Feel your body. But from time to time, consider one particularly beautiful thought, Hiranyagarbha. It essentially suggests the universe was born from a single point, as you were born from a single embryo. That when you can feel that point within you, that you are an individual drop of existence, and recognize that the universe itself came from such a point, something happens, the worldview expands, time collapses into the now, And you might just experience the artistry. You might experience the masterpiece that every living moment is. It all comes from a golden point. Slow, steady breaths. Now, if you can feel that, you're connected to that idea that it all comes from a living golden point within you. The epiphany of Hiranyagarbha is real for you. If it is, then chant one more Om. If it's not, if you're not connecting, just stay in your silence, which is equally profound, equally okay. Bring your hands to heart center. Again, lengthen the spine, observe the consequence physiologically, wakefulness, presence, embodiment. Take a second to listen to the world, so you're externalizing your mind from feeling the body to listening to the environment. Consider the terms of artistry. Consider the terms of blissfulness. Consider the terms of the divine. And if those mystical terms seem more obvious to you, consider it is because philosophically the mind has been purged of its toxicity through the techniques and through your non-reactivity. Beautiful consequence. With an exhale, release your wrist back to your knees after this moment of recognition. And with your following inhale, open your eyes and just repeat in the mind, I am no longer meditating. And in that, the trance of your practice becomes obvious to you. And the normal state of waking consciousness, Jagrath, also becomes obvious to you. And in that, we learn of both through their comparison.